if you go back to the birth of cloud, it wasn't as if Amazon was sitting there and saw this opportunity and ran after it. They had real estate meaning, server infrastructure, running their business, their book sale business, right? Competing with the likes of Barnes and Noble, excuse me. And in that context, saw an opportunity to lease that real estate, right? With the advancement in networking technologies, with the advancement in virtualization, which had existed already to some degree on other systems, such as mainframes and what have you. And an opportunity arose that they capitalized on, and fast forward today, the rest is history.
And Derwin, I kind of throw a similar question to you, or pretty much the same question to you. And I ask you, I think in this case, you both are, leaders within very, very large organizations. And then, someone who, my Caribbean business is a small organization, a 30-person organization. And so interested to hear, Derwin, your thoughts on that same question of, developing resiliency, because, what a very large organization can do is different than what a smaller organization can do. But I do think that, as Nick said, I think one of the principles that I heard inside of there is the ability to do something, and I always talk about this as well, the ability to do something that is adjacent to what you do today is a way that kind of helps you build a platform for innovation. What other thoughts do you have around, how businesses can make that ability to turn and pivot and be resilient more sustainable?
Well, I think one of the things that has become evident to us is you really need to understand your business in its fullness and understand the risks around your business. And then that allows you to look at your business in a totally different way and maybe take advantage of those adjacencies and other opportunities. So, we jump on the technology and we look at that, but at the end of the day, the technology is really a means to an end, because if you don't understand your business, you're not going to be able to find the technology to help you with your business. So if I just use us as an example, it's really understanding, what it is your customers really want. What are the things that you really need to build your business upon to make your business sustainable? One of the things that has jumped out as a big issue in coming out of the pandemic is the whole issue of logistics and supply chains. Prior to the pandemic, you sort of took some of these things for granted. I will always get material, I'll always get these types of things. So even just understanding your business from the perspective of, it's not my business alone. I need to make sure that there's continuity of supply of something as basic as cleaning services, raw materials. All of those things allows you to sort of really look at your business in a different way, just beyond the technology. And then you look at these adjacencies, as you say, and say, okay, so for instance, if I take, better control of my whole supply chain, how can I use that differently? How can I make a business out of that? So you've seen businesses doing things like that. And I think it's really forcing us into a situation where we have a lot more structure around our business, where we understand all of the different sort of inputs into the business. And each input itself is an area that you really need to examine and solve for in terms of the resilience by pillar, if you want to call it that. Because at the end of the day, the old saying, a chain is as strong as its weakest link. If one of those pillars falls down, your business is going to have a problem. So I think beyond the technology, one of the things that we have seen is people are looking across the whole, sort of foundation of their business to understand all of the respective pillars and to design ways and means to keep those pillars strengthened as you move forward.
Right, and I'm curious, I want to hear from both of you on this, because when I think about disruption, or I think about being disruptive as a business, and I think about innovation, I tend to think about, partially your ability to unlock that next thing, right? Or unlock that new service or unlock that new business. And, you know, Nick, you talked about that. You know, Amazon was in this space and was able to move to an adjacent space and so on. And in a Caribbean context, we get beat up, our businesses get beat up a lot in terms of, you know, being way more willing to bring in stuff. Okay, let me take this technology. Okay, I see this is popular here. I'm going to adapt it and do this. Okay, I'm going to, you know, bring in the products and resell them at a little margin. And we get beat up for not necessarily coming up with net new innovation or investing a lot in research to then, you know, provide that ability to disrupt. So first, Nick, I want to hear from you, you know, having worked in R&D and worked in innovation and centers of innovation. You know, can you talk a little bit about, you know, return on innovation, return on research and development, and how a Caribbean business could think about, if they want to get started there at any size, you know, how do you think about getting that kind of ROI ultimately that you can then say, I entered the huge new market as a result of that thing we did 2 years ago, or tested 1 year ago, or 10 years ago?
Yeah, this is a very important point, right? And I'll make two comments on this. One, if you actually look at the region, there's a conference known as Tech Beach that has been running for a few years. And if you go back to 2018, they got funding and support to attract startups to the conference to help them in that journey, pair them up with people like myself, as well as venture capitalists who could provide guidance on growing that startup and ultimately helping them in a revenue growth trajectory. The number of startups that applied in 2018 from Trinidad and Tobago alone was over 200. Now, many of those weren't earning revenue just yet, but what it shows is that, you know, computer science from a digital technology point of view has become so ubiquitous across all sectors, not just within the information technology industry of itself, that you have a generation of people coming through, you know, the high school systems, of course, the university and tertiary systems as well. And maybe they're supplementing what they learn at school with online courses. In fact, many of them do. And they recognize that the inhibitors for them starting a business no longer apply. They no longer have to buy real estate to build out a business, which goes back to the comment I made before in terms of born on the cloud. Right, so it places them to some degree, and this is the point you're making in some sense, Chike, at an advantage, because they can be agile, they can be nimble. But what has happened when you extend that notion to traditional enterprises? A famous book known as The Innovator's Dilemma that talks about this, which, you know, Airbnb, Uber, etc. They have disrupted many a company in the nature of those industries that they now partake in. Large enterprises have developed and adopted that similar agile type of approach. So no longer do you subscribe to a build and they would come type of model, right, based on what your market analysis shows. But because you are moving to cloud, because you already have some critical infrastructure applications running on some providers or multiple providers, as a matter of fact, for traditional enterprises, it means you can take a similar agile approach and test the market. There's a notion of a minimal viable product, which didn't exist prior to an agile approach, agile methodology. And what the MVP, minimal viable product, allows you to do is to test how the market responds. Even though you've done a ton of market analysis already that suggests this is an area you want to go into. Before you commit a significant amount of investment, people, resource, etc., you take the temperature of that MVP in the market and you continuously add to it, which is very different from how innovation was done before. So I think, you know, bringing this all together, I think the region actually, if I use the Tech Beach data as a litmus test, if you will, there's clearly a lot that's happening, right? And they're in some ways positioned advantageously compared to traditional enterprise. But the traditional enterprise as well is also responding and has been for many years, not only in the tech provider lens, but also on the sector lens, financial, insurance, retail, telecommunications, and so on, by taking that very agile approach, creating MVPs, seeing how the market responds, and either discontinue or ramp up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned kind of the core concept from one of my favorite books, and yeah, so anybody who's listening to this, get the Lean Starter by Eric Ries, which is one of the, really the books that really brought together in an easy, approachable way the same concept that Nick is talking about. Fail fast, learn fast, never do something for never learn something for $1,000 that you could have learned for $10. And you're right, because that is a very approachable way to for a business of any size. It doesn't have massive dollars to say, oh no, I can research and develop products as well by sort of seeing a pain, taking it to market quickly, evolve quickly, and so on.